I told you I'd be back with more books. Again, backwards. I got to figure out how I can do this without, well, I know how to do it. I just got to do it and make it comfortable to do it. Where I can show something and you can read it the right way. It's not a mirror reflection, whatever. Anyway, so this is some of my books of the Ruiz family. I've got at least 2 more, I think, at home right now. But the Four Agreements comes out of this family of authors. I don't have the Four Agreements here, but I have the Fifth Agreement, which is a follow-up to the Four Agreements. Every time I get a copy of the Four Agreements, I end up giving it to somebody. It came into my life a couple years ago. A friend of mine recommended I read it, and I read it in a couple days. It's pretty short and easy to read, and I read it, and it changed my life. And so I have been giving it to everybody every chance I get. I like it a lot, and so I share it. And then about a year later, I think I got the Fifth Agreement book right off after I read the Four Agreements, but I didn't read it. And it was one of those things where it's like, it was sitting there, I loved the Four Agreements, I'm telling everybody about it. I got the next book, why don't I read it? I didn't read it for a long time. It took about a year, I think, before I read it. And when I read it, it was very powerful and meaningful. It recaps the Four Agreements, first off, but then it goes into greater detail and it adds a Fifth Agreement. And so, I thought, well, I should have read it earlier, but I wasn't ready, I guess. And that's part of this spirituality that I'm following, is that you follow the flow. Kind of like Taoism, you follow the flow of life, the Wu Wei. You go with what needs to be done in the moment. If you're tired, you sleep. If you're hungry, you eat. You do what you need to do. And so sometimes that comes out, I feel, in information. And so in certain books or in lectures and stuff that I listen to, I find it in the right moment when I'm prepared to. And I think that, and I guess it's hard to say that if I had, how do you know that it wouldn't have been the right moment? It was like, well, maybe anytime I read it, it would have been powerful to me. But I don't think that's necessarily the case, because there's a book that I read later on called A Radical Change. And that book, I know if I'd have read that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have read it. If someone had tried to explain it to me, I would have rejected it completely, because it didn't fit with my opinions at the time, the agreements I'd made with the world. So there is a time, and also sometimes I start a book and I'll start reading it and I kind of pause for a little while, and I think that's maybe because I'm being prepared in my life to receive that information. That's just my theory. But the Four Agreements is a book that I recommend everybody. I think you should definitely start out with that one. The idea being that, so like in my last video I talked about the mastery of self, and it talks about the dream, the world being a dream of what we create. And so in this dream, we have opinions and we teach them to our children or to the people around us, and then they can make agreements with our opinions. And so a lot of the things that we believe are someone else's opinions that we've agreed with. And we make these agreements throughout our dream, throughout our world. Some of these things are good, some of these things are not good, some of these things are neutral, some of them, whatever, don't matter. But all of them start out as opinions. It's someone's interpretation of something else that they present to you, your parents, your teachers, your priests, your whoever. They present these opinions of theirs to you, and a lot of these things happen when we're children, when we're really young, so we believe them because we don't have the capacity to question it. We don't have the awareness to question it. And so as we develop in our awareness and the capacity to do that, we do, and then we start to decide, is this an opinion that I want to incorporate into my life, or is this something that I'm going to let go of? And so he suggests, in the Four Agreements, they suggest 4 agreements. I'm just trying to think how I want to go next. So, and each one of these agreements is something that if you can break the agreements that you previously had, such as, well, I can't think of an example offhand, but people behave a certain way in public or whatever, something like that. You break that agreement with the world and replace it with a new agreement. You create a new agreement. And so that's what he's offering, is these 4 agreements. And so I'll tell you what they are. I won't go into detail on them. But so the first one is be impeccable with your word. I guess I'll say it. So the first line on that is from the inside cover. This is a real brief synopsis. But speak with integrity, basically. Camera's over here. So be impeccable with your words. Speak with integrity. Words have power. They have meaning. And so it depends, and I've talked about this recently as well, and it depends on the words we use can really affect things significantly. So be precise with the things you say. Don't take anything personally is the second agreement. That's brilliant wisdom. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. It's important to remember. Remember when I read this, well, not this, but when I read the 4 agreements the first time, I was in my office and I read about that agreement, and I was leaving. I was driving out of the parking lot, and I'm sitting there waiting to pull out of the parking lot, and the guy on the road driving by, these 2 kids, probably 17 years old, driving by in a pickup truck. And I'm sitting there, and I make eye contact with the passenger in this truck, and he's laughing. And so I'm watching him as he drive by, and my immediate reaction was, he's laughing at me. Why is he laughing at me? What's wrong with me? What's going on? And then I remembered the don't take anything personally. I thought, that's nothing about me. And I realized that how easy it is, and how often I was doing this, because of my anxiety, my self-consciousness, or whatever, I was immediately going to think, this guy, this jerk, and judge him and label him, all this stuff. What's he looking at? What's he laughing at me? What's wrong with him? And I could have been miserable about that my whole drive home, thinking about that, just ruminating on that. And he's gone. He has no idea that I even looked at him. He might have been he's talking to his friend, and he's laughing, and he just happened to make eye contact with me. He might not even register that he was making eye contact with me as he drove by. And I'm pretty sure he had, well, I don't know, but why would I think that he had anything to do with me? His reaction was anything to do with me. But that's where my brain went. And so I was able to stop myself by remembering what I just read. Slow down. I can't even talk when I slow down. Don't take anything personally. And so I realized it had nothing to do with me. Even if he was laughing at me, it had nothing to do with me. So I let it go, and I was happy. I was fine. And so that was one that, as I incorporated that one into my life, I think I probably focused on that one the most. That one, it was meaningful. It was helpful to me. All right. Third agreement: don't make assumptions. We all know what assuming does. We learned that in 7th grade social science class with Mr. Peeney back in South Brunswick Township, New Jersey, in 1993 or 4 or something. Don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Find out, figure it out. Always do your best is the 4th agreement. I'm moving along here because I'm gonna hit that point on my video time where I then have trouble because I don't have enough free space on this device to transfer these videos around. Okay, so always do your best. It's the 4th agreement. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best, and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. And I've interpreted that to be, I take that to the next step of assume that everyone else is doing their best. Well, don't assume, because don't make assumptions, right? But look at other people as though they're doing their best. And so I treat people as though they're doing their best. And I feel like that makes a difference as well, because I do believe that we are doing our best, that if we could do better, we would. And so sometimes we feel like, oh, I could do better than this, but we don't do better than that, and then we start the self-negative self-talk and self-doubt and stuff like that. But if we could do better, we would have. There must have been some factor, maybe one that we're not aware of, but we were tired or hungry or just stressed or whatever it is, or upset. All these, whatever you want to say. I guess I don't need to list them all because there's a bunch of them and they all are relevant. But there's something going on in our lives that is stopping us from, what am I talking about? Doing our best. Then there can be factors into that, but I think it's still valuable to consider that we are doing our best. Everyone else is doing their best, even if it looks weak to you. They're still doing their best, yourself included. All right, and because I'm holding the 5th agreement, I will give you the 5th agreement. But read the 4 agreements if you want to. That's good. The 5th agreement is be skeptical, but learn to listen. Don't believe yourself or anybody else. Use the power of doubt to question everything you hear. Is it really the truth? Listen to the intent behind words, and you will understand the real message. And so I think that's very important. Don't take things at face value. There could be some hidden meaning or some secondary agenda. We don't know. And so, but listen. You have to listen to it. You can't find out the truth if you don't listen. But don't assume things are the truth just because someone tells you that they are. I guess that's the part of it. Be skeptical, but learn to listen. And I find that that's very valuable. for me as well. So the 4 agreements, I mentioned in my last video. I wanted to give a little recap on that one. It's a book I highly recommend. You can get it on Amazon. It's usually like $8 or something. It's pretty short, easy to read. If you know me in person and I have a copy, I'll give it to you. But if you know anybody I know, ask them if they've got a copy of it, because chances are they do. Just kidding. But it's a really good book, and I encourage you to read it. Thank you. Have a nice day.